It's really out there, isn't it? I mean, you know, when I finally did listen to all the mixes and everything, and we put it in order, I realized that every single song, there's no songs that are similar on the album. They all go in 20 different directions.
Absolutely.
But I think that that's what makes it Alice Cooper, is the fact that it's the Alice voice and lyrics that make it Alice. And so, in A Nightmare, you go in a million different directions, so why not write the songs like that? You know, I mean, a Bite Your Face Off is a 1965 Rolling Stones song. It should be, I mean, it feels like that. Bob Ezrin knows more about Alice Cooper than I do. I mean, he and I created Alice, basically. We created Alice's thought pattern, the way he sings, what he thinks, what his sense of humor is. We really just sat down and literally created that from Love It to Death, Killer, School's Out, $1 Billion Babies, you know, all those albums. When you're writing those albums, you are actually creating the character while you're doing it. Because we would go, okay, here's the lyric on this, and we'd write it, and then all of a sudden I'd go, would Alice say that? You know, and he would go, no, Alice would not say that. Because, you know, that's not his character to say that. Okay, let's rewrite that. So we would always talk about Alice in the third person. It was like if I were going to write for Zorro, or if I were going to write for, you know, Jekyll and Hyde, I would say, okay, Jekyll would say this, Hyde would say it this way. So let's, you know, and that's how Alice is. Alice would say it this way, I would say it a different way. I have never had so much fun in the studio. Bob and I are, you know, we bring out the worst in each other, which usually makes for a good album, because we both have a very dark sense of humor. And, you know, most of the time I would say, we should never do a disco song. You know, and then I went, well, if Alice was going to do a disco song, Disco Bloodbath Boogie Fever, it would be a total rip on disco.
Absolutely.
And we should make that part of his nightmare. And we should do it because we shouldn't do it. You know, in other words, you should challenge. We've never done that, so let's make Alice do it.
And talking about your sense of humour, the early albums were very dark.
Yeah.
But there was always that strain of humour in there, even if a lot of people didn't get the joke way back when.
Yeah. Well, we would do a line and I would say, okay, I got 9 people in the world are going to get that joke. You know? I don't think it's like, because it's all over this album. You know, I mean, it's pretty dark in a lot of places. But, you know, I mean, I think the audience is a little bit let in on the fact that Alice is a character that I play. Whereas in the beginning, they didn't know that. As much as Ozzy plays a character. Ozzy plays the Ozzy character on stage, and Iggy plays Iggy on stage. Very few guys off stage are the same guys that you see on stage.
Sure.
Jim Morrison was pretty much the same guy, off and on. He was this spaced out poet, you know, bent on self-destruction. But when I, you know, even when I see guys like McCartney and Jagger, when they go on stage, they become this other character. They become this Mr. Personality guy. Off stage, they're a personality, but they're not like that. So Alice is just an extreme version of that, you know. Well, I think that you always, if you're a really creative writer, especially, you know, the power is in the writing. It's really, it's how good is this song is really going to be how successful everything is. Bob and I will not settle on a bad song. In other words, if it's got a great riff, but the lyric doesn't quite fit, and it's not like this, we just leave it off. There's 2 or 3 songs that are sitting in the bin right now, I mean, maybe for later, that I love the riffs on it, or I love the melody line, but it's not a complete song. So it didn't make the album. There's a song called My Favorite Mutation that is, I mean, it's one of my favorite songs, and it just didn't fit the album. It didn't fit, we hadn't finished it yet somehow. So you have to leave those back. But you know, again, it's Bob Ezrin really does call for, he says, we can't write a riff song. We can write a great riff as long as the melody line and the lyric are married to it. And you can sit at a piano and sing that verse, the B section and the chorus, like a song, rather than here's the verse and it's just one note. Because a lot of rock and a lot of what's passing for rock right now is just a one note, kind of you're screaming at somebody. It's not a song. You know, I mean, it's something, but it's not a song. Well, I think Rob Zombie's the closest, even though, because he's done the same thing I've done, and strangely enough, same as Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga has done the same. She created Lady Gaga the way I created Alice. It's a part of her, but it's another part. It's a more animated part of her. Same way Alice is a more animated part of me. We write songs for those characters, then we perform the songs as those characters. It's exactly what Gaga does. Different kind of music, but she does a great job of it. I mean, she's really created something unusual, you know? Rob Zombie and I have the same sense of humor when it comes to the fact that horror movies are generally pretty funny. You know, I mean, when you're sitting there and the guy, I was watching The Evil Dead, and I'm going, can this get any bloodier? I said, this movie is just, and then a pipe breaks, and he's covered in blood again, and I started laughing so loud, because I said, yes, it can get bloodier, and it's so over the top that it has to make you laugh.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, if you're not laughing at Final Destination 5, have you seen that yet?
No, not that one.
I was laughing out loud, and my wife, who's a ballerina, has the same sense of humor. She's this, you know, classical music ballerina, and she was laughing her head off because the deaths were so over the top, and it took 15 things to happen for this death to happen that you were just laughing because it was so. But you know, most people out there were going, oh, you know, and we were sitting there going, ah, you know. And I think that you must look at horror movies as comedies. Yeah, very few horror movies don't have senses of. The Exorcist didn't have a sense of humor, and that's what made it so scary. Here's a little girl being possessed by a demon, and she's saying things that a little girl should never say because she's possessed by this. And then you think about it and you think, that's possible. And that's what's scary about it, is the fact that that could happen.
Yeah.
Demonic possession could happen. Whereas Freddy Krueger, come on, you know, I watch those movies because I want to see. They set it up so that every kid you hated in high school gets killed.
Absolutely.
You know, the football captain of the football team that used to put you in the locker, the cheerleader that wouldn't go out with you. They all meet the most horrendous deaths. And you start rooting for Jason because he's killing all these people that you hated in high school. You know, and you start going, he's my hero, I love this guy. So really, they kind of work in a backwards situation. You know, Jason and Michael Myers and, you know, and Freddy become your heroes. They're eliminating all these people you hated. Well, for one thing, I think that what we did do was important. Rock was getting stale. I think rock visually was getting stale. I looked around and the Who were exciting and the Stones were exciting. Most other bands were not very exciting. They wrote great songs, but they didn't do anything. They just stood there. And I think that bringing a villain into the scene, a villain that was going to give you a show, was important for rock and roll, because it did begat Kiss, begat Bowie, begat all these other acts that now are fun to watch. That there was nothing like that before Alice. Well, first of all, you know, any child psychology 101 says if you tell the kid that they can't see something, they're going to want it. PMRC could not have been more important for sales of records. Bands that wouldn't have sold records, kids would see PMRC, I'm buying that. I mean, it was the child psychology. Come on, how silly are these people? They played right into the hands of, you know, NWA and groups like that. Oh, we would be, in fact, when we got banned in England, that was the greatest thing that ever happened to us. Our record went right to #1. We sold out every ticket in Wembley because people said, if this thing is so scary that they don't want us to see it, I gotta go see it. You know what I mean? Anytime that you ban something, you immediately say, you tell people, you really should see this, because, you know, because my curiosity's up. It's so bad that I can't see it. I gotta go see it, you know. Well, I think that I'm very fortunate in the fact that Alice, the longevity of Alice is amazing to me. The fact that 45 years later we're still packing places, selling records, and people are still, they now kind of treat Alice as a sort of like woven into the fabric of Americana or the music scene. So that now we're little treasures. Ozzy and Alice and, you know, the people that have lasted 45 years are now kind of revered. I always said, I remember when I was young and dangerous, now I'm older and lovable, you know. I think what it was the fact that the shock value again, when CNN became CNN, shock was over.
Yeah.
Because reality was more shocking than anything that Manson or I could do. You know, so now shock is it's a vehicle, and we use it once in a while, but really you can't shock the audience. You know, they're shock-proof. It's the funniest thing because nobody knows how it works. To this day, I do not know how people are nominated for the Hall of Fame, because people got in front of me that I influenced. I got in before the people that should be in before me, but you know, none of us know how it works. All we know is now I get a ballot now, and I will get a ballot, and I will vote on, you know, there'll be all these nominees, and I'll be voting on. This will be my first year of voting, and you know, I mean, I'll be looking for the Moody Blues, Deep Purple, Donovan, Joe Cocker. You know, I'm thinking of the people that have been around for 45, 50 years that are still out there doing it. You know, to me, they deserve to be in. Burt Bacharach, the most famous songwriter in the world, is not in the Hall of Fame. And I'm trying to figure out how that's possible.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
You know, this year I think the nominees are Joan Jett, I think Small Faces, which is a good one, Guns N' Roses. It's a lock. Seems like a lock, you know. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get in. This last year was the first time we were nominated in 14 years, and we got in. So that was, I mean, that was great for us. But I think that opens the door for bands like Kiss. Us getting in opens the doors for Iron Maiden and bands like that, I think, because now there's at least we proved that the outsiders can get in. Tom Waits got in. Dr. John, you know, I mean, these were all the underground bands, way underground. So I think now there's a lot more hope for bands like that.